Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. We're just going to give it a minute here while everyone joins in. My cat is situating herself to jump on the back of my chair, so maybe we'll have a jump scare later on. There we go. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar. So at Civis, our plan is to have a webinar roughly every month this year. So if this isn't your first, welcome back. If this is your first, welcome on in. Thanks for attending. So I'm Ryan Jewell at Civis Analytics. I'm a senior technical success analyst. You might recognize me from our regular check-ins if you're one of my clients, or you might recognize me from the ticket queue if you've ever submitted a support ticket. Or you might recognize me from our YouTube channel if you ever checked it out. Either way, it's great to chat with you all today. Welcome on in. We have a very exciting webinar where one of our clients, Middle Seat, will be going over some of their campaign reporting infrastructure that they run on the platform. Personally, I'm really excited for today's webinar. Middle Seat is really using Civis platform to its fullest. So it's going to be great for them to share with us how they're leveraging Civis platform. So before we jump into things, just want to go over Q&A. So there is a Q&A feature under meeting tools where you can ask any question you want. So anytime something comes up and you want to answer a question, you can throw it on there. We won't be answering questions until the end. So it's going to take until the end of the meeting until we get to your questions, but feel free to use that feature as much as you like, and we'll get your questions answered. And one last thing for me to cover is a high-level overview of Civis Platform. So Civis Platform is built around a pretty simple idea. All your data team's tools and all your data should live in one place, and we believe that place, of course, should be Civis Platform. On the data side, Civis is built on AWS Redshift with integrations particularly well-suited for nonprofits and public sector organizations, such as ready-made connectors for CRMs like Salesforce and HubSpot. So getting your data into Civis Platform is quick and it's easy. When it comes to digging into your data, your analysts, your data scientists, and your engineers have a unified workbench in Civis Platform where they can write code in languages such as DBT, R, Python, and SQL, build models, work with AI, work with LLMs, and automate all that together into workflows. This prevents the need from jumping from one platform to another, as your data, your ETL, your modeling, and all of your actual insights are safely secured in Civis Platform. Once your data is unified and your tools are all in one place, you can also use Civis Platform to create dashboards and other visualizations. Civis Platform is directly connected to Tableau and other visualization tools such as RShiny and Streamlit, so the people who need to see your data can see it however they want, whenever they want. Civis Platform also enables collaborative cross-team work with role-based access controls and sharing features while maintaining data security for your team by allowing them to have real controls over who sees what. We're also SOC 2 Type 2 certified and FedRAMP authorized. So at the end of the day, with Civis Platform, your team gets to focus on the actual analysis and doesn't have to worry about the headache of all the plumbing. So with that, I'll hand things over to the Middle Seat team to introduce themselves and go over their campaign infrastructure.
Thanks so much. And Ryan, if you don't mind, or my adding me as a co-founder so I can swap the slides, that would be awesome. Well, first and foremost, unfortunately, I'm going to be presenting alone today. My colleague Irma who is really the star of the operation here, is out sick, but have no fear, I can carry on the message. Okay, and then we can go to the next slide. Cool. So a little bit about Middleseat, just so you have the context of what we do and how we go about our work and what kind of things we might use Civis for. We are a media and fundraising firm in the progressive space. We work for candidates running for office, as well as nonprofit organizations, political action committees, unions, and so forth and so on. Our two kind of buckets of work can be best spelled out as like media and fundraising. Under the media bucket, we do things like advertising on television and the internet. We do branding, so coming up with logos and style guides, creative like graphic design, and build websites. And on the fundraising side, we are a small dollar fundraising operation. So our primary experience is in email fundraising, text message fundraising, and advertising to raise money from small dollar donors. And we can hit the next slide. I still don't have the ability to present, by the way, if you don't mind. But okay, go ahead. Today we'll be talking about kind of the end goal, which is allowing us to build scalable dashboards for dozens of clients that pull together data from all of our various CRMs that we work with. In this example, you'll see dashboards that are created from data that we've pulled out of ActBlue, ActionKit, Shopify, and some other places like Switchboard. Our challenge, which may or may not be relatable depending on those who are in the room, is doing so in a way that's scalable, so that as we add a new client, we can quickly install that software and bring them into our workflow to create new dashboards each time relatively quickly. So this is just a little preview of what the end goal looks like, and we can move to the next slide to talk about our installers. The first kind of concept that we have come up with using some of the core Civis tools here in these three buckets is the concept of an installer. And so whenever we bring a new client into our Civis platform, we are going to make use of these kind of three buckets to install that client. The first is GitHub. So our Python code that runs the kind of install script is going to make use of the GitHub integration. What that means is that anyone on our team can work on that code with version control, and it means that the latest version is going to be automatically piped into the Python installer at any given time. The second component of the installer, which I'll show you in just a moment here, is Civis's parameters tool. And so we use the parameters tool to allow our administrators to type in some of those key configuration variables before running each installation. And the third and most central and important part of this whole thing is using Civis's support for Python to do things like create jobs for importing, create jobs for exporting, insert those jobs into various workflows, edit scripts for working with our dbt and transformations, so that everything kind of happens at the install level and there's a lot less manual work going on. So if you want to head to the next slide, you can go ahead and see a screenshot of a typical installation. So this is what an admin is going to see on one of our install scripts. This is how we install a new client. In this fake example, Colin Allred on Civis by bringing in their NGP data. What this installer is going to do is, one, the admin is going to type in the parameters here. So we'll type in the name of the client, we'll type in the server that we're connecting to, and we'll type in the database name. that will be like the basis for us connecting to a SQL mirror of sorts that has all of the data from this client's NGP van. And then we, and you can use that set parameters button up at the top there to both create parameters for those templated scripts, as well as to, to get them set. So these are just preset when we come in, and then all the admin needs to do is kind of fill out the blanks. You'll also see we use the credential in as one of the parameters here, which is one of the nice ways we're able to keep things secure by keeping any sort of like private credentials behind the security tools that Civis has built into the platform. Once the admin has filled out all the necessary details to install this client, they'll just hit run. And as you can see in the command section, it's going to pull in from our GitHub the latest version of our NGP van installation script. We can go ahead and hit the next one, which will show you a little bit about kind of how our parameters are set up so that you can take a look at that. And you can notice that we're both setting up parameters that are, strings, and also making use of that credential feature as well. Once we've installed a new client, what's happening in the background and what that Python script is doing is it's creating jobs for importing the data from that data source for that client. It is editing the transformation jobs, which I'll show you here in a moment. And then it is creating jobs for exporting data about that client for the use in a dashboard. And that installer is going to also package those jobs into our pre-existing workflow by using all the Python tools we have to kind of reinsert where needed those new jobs so that they get added to our automatic daily running workflow. The next step we'll talk through, and you can move to the next slide, is going to be the transformation step. And sorry for my text overflow here. You're not missing much. You're just missing the word neatly. So once a client software is installed, the previous installer script that we talked about is going to create those new imports, transformations, and exports. And now we leverage the power of dbt in Civis to transform those features, right? Anytime we're getting raw data from a client, from NGP van or ActionKit or Action Network or ActBlue, there's going to be different organization from their schema and table structure from the SQL mirrors, or in the case of ActBlue, we're processing raw webhook data. All of that data is going to need to be transformed before we bring it to the public layer, which we'll talk about in a moment, that serves our dashboards. I think a little over a year ago, probably a year and a half ago, we switched to using dbt for this process, and it's been a really big improvement in our performance and reliability. If you go ahead and switch to the next slide, the key advantages of dbt for those who haven't become familiar with it are these three among others. But one of the key advantages here is the automated testing and QA that's built into dbt. So you can ensure that after transformations are run, that certain columns are not null, or you can enforce unique primary keys. You can have certain parts of the transformations fail if tests fail. The second part that's really key for us is the ease of version control support. And so all our dbt code is maintained in our GitHub, so we have really good version control on that across clients. And last but not least, it really simplifies our pipeline. So we're not chaining up a lot of create and drop statements for data sets. We just have a single container script that collapses many different SQL tasks together in one area that runs efficiently and builds on the data every day. One of the key features of dbt that we're leveraging is incremental builds on the data. And so every day when we ingest data from our clients instead of retransforming every client's data set all at once, we're retransforming just from updated rows and from new rows. And so that's been a big speed boost for us as well. There's some great documentation on dbt on Civis's website, and actually I think a video that kind of introduces it. If this is foreign to you, it's probably the one thing from this presentation I would spend the most time looking at, because I think it's the thing that's given us the most value over the last couple of years since we switched. Once the data has been transformed, and we can go ahead and hit that next slide, we're going to move into exports. Now, there's a lot of different ways to publish dashboards. Civis has some built-in analytics tools that are really great. For our purposes, we wanted to build public dashboards that were shareable using kind of Google's feature set with our clients, so that a client can look at their dashboard without any sort of obstacle to doing that. And then so that the dashboards are also readily available. So one of the benefits of using Google Looker Studio and Google Sheets to feed that Looker Studio is that at any given time when Looker Studio tries to load the data, it's loading from a cached version of the data that is run on an export schedule to a Google Sheet. So if you go ahead and look at the next slide, this is kind of an example of what the data might look like inside of a Google Sheet that actually feeds the charts and graphs for the data that you will see in the database, in the Looker Studio. So we're going to be exporting basically summary level data for each of the things we want to report on, and then we'll be able to use that to feed the Looker Studio. And for those who use Google Workspace at your organizations, Looker Studio is a free tool. And so that's part of the reason we like it as well. Next slide is going to walk you through kind of that full workflow at a high level. Of course, we're starting with that ingestion step. So that begins with our installer, which installs a regular job that is going to ingest new data every day from our client sources, whether that's their ActBlue account, their ActionKit account, an NGP account, or whatever it may be. Then that data goes into a transformation step, which is where we're using that really nice dbt feature. And last but not least, we're going to hit that export step. And in our case, we're exporting kind of structured small data to Google Sheets that we can use as the basis for Looker Studio reports. The next slide will kind of show this is a graphical representation of what our snapshot actually looks like. And so we have kind of stringed together these workflows, and this runs twice daily for us. There's some stuff in here that I didn't really go into, like we have a maintenance check to make sure that once a week we might run a different set of jobs that only run once a week, so that runs first. And then we have our imports. We've found that since Middlesea is operating off of so many clients, that having some auto cancellation features for SQL mirrors and other sources that might get stuck, rather than having them fail off the whole job for everyone else, we have them cancel after a certain period of time, which gives us the reliability we need. And then it's going to go through a couple of stages of dbt. Again, that's really just transforming that data, cleaning it up into the high-level tables that we want to create in our Civis system. After dbt, it goes to our post-core workflow, and that's where all of our exports are happening. So we're going to have exports to client dashboards, but we'll also have exports to management level dashboards as well. We've also set up a couple of neat features, like a failure monitor that checks the workflow for failed jobs and then reports that to the next step, which is a little Slack tooltip. Our organization heavily uses Slack, and so if something fails, we're going to get a nice little notification inside of Slack And those things were relatively easy to configure as well. All right. The last but not least slide here, and then I'll probably do a quick screen share so that people can actually see things a little more dynamically, is Looker Studio. And so our, for those who haven't played around with Looker Studio, it's a very passable, free kind of data visualization environment that works out of the box with Google Sheets data. So to add data to a report, you're very simply gonna click add data. And then this nice little screenshot will pop up here. It will say select a Google Sheet. You can select any Google Sheet that you have access to, select a tab, and then click add. By doing that, the data will be kind of inside of the Looker Studio, and then you'll be able to choose if you want to represent that data as a table, as a chart, as a pivot table, or a graph, or just a number count and stuff. And you can create really pretty data studios. I'll briefly take over the presentation if you don't mind, Ryan, and just click around a fake version of this data studio to show people kind of the end product here. I'll bring it into view mode. So this is kind of what a client might see when they're looking at this data. And all of this is updated twice a day using that Civis workflow. So you're going to be able to see kind of fundraising data, which we've brought in from ActBlue, but also email data, which comes from NGP-Van or ActionKit on like, hey, these are the emails we sent out to our audience, and how many did we send, and how many people opened those emails, and how much fundraising happened on those emails. We also have reports on like deliverability, like are we getting good open rates for the domains that we're sending to. We do very similar things with Switchboard data, which is our texting vendor. So we'll look at like messages we've sent, how many were delivered, how many clicks happened, how many donations. And we can even do things like monitor the ROI of certain ad placements. So if we placed a fundraising ad here and spent $3,000 on it, we want to look at how much the people from that ad raised. And so you can kind of see the diversity of charts, graphs, and like stats that are available in the Looker Studio toolset. And as you'll notice, as I click around, it's really snappy compared to other analytics tools, because again, it's just loading off of the small summary data that I've put into Google Sheets using the auto exporter. And I'll just briefly show people how they can add data as well, just in case anyone is curious at trying this. You can use Google Sheets, and then you'll just select a Google Sheet that you're interested in bringing in. Here I have some data on 2024 presidential results by congressional district. Could be a little slow, but I will load the tabs for that Google Sheet. You'll select the tab, and then it will give you the option to bring in that data. All right, I won't bore everyone with waiting for this. So that's kind of the end of our prepared slides. And yeah, I'll turn it back over to Ryan to see if people have questions on how we accomplish this, what tools we're using, anything else.
Thank you, Kenneth. That was amazing. Really appreciate that. Love the DBT shout out. Glad you got some lift out of using DBT. In terms of Q&A questions, just reviewing those real quick. Don't have any Q&A questions in at the moment. So if anyone does have any questions, this would be a great time to post them. If you do have any questions for Kenneth or the Civis team. You can get to the Q&A. Let me just navigate to the second slide real quick. You can get to the Q&A under the meeting notes. So there's 9 little buttons at the bottom right of the Google Hangout, and from there is a Q&A button, that little question mark. Anyone does have any questions?
That means I've done a great job presenting, I think, Ryan.
You knocked it out of the park, Kenneth. I think you did. Got one question in from Devin. What have been any challenges you've had with the workflow on Civis, on DBT, or on Looker? What are the challenges you faced in setting this all up? Excellent.
Yeah, that's a good question. A few come to mind. We've definitely had some challenges. The first and probably biggest persistent challenge is Looker Studio is really easy and user-friendly to set up, and you can see why we would want to use it, because it really easily integrates with like the Google Sheets export. It's easy for even just a staffer who doesn't, isn't a data engineer, to set up a really pretty kind of analytics studio. But it doesn't have any semblance of like version control. And so what that means is every time we set up a client dashboard, we're duplicating from an old one, but there's a lot of manual work to like reassign the data sources over to new Google Sheets and things like that. And so, we're currently exploring alternatives to that for that reason. But if you are in need of like, hey, I need to set up a quick dashboard that pulls data on a regular basis from my Civis database, I do think it's a good kind of solution for that. Other challenges we faced, I showed you inside of that workflow. You'll notice there's a couple of things like the failure monitor and Slack and the auto cancel. Those are features we put in because we had problems, right? And so one of our big issues is we've, dozens of clients, and each of those clients runs 4 or 5 pieces of software that we're bringing data in on. If any one of those pieces of software has a failure point or chokes out when we're ingesting data or doing something with those pieces of software, that could be a weak point. And so being able to be resilient when one thing breaks has been a key kind of learning and thing for us as we go along. And so that's where some of the like auto cancellation and failure monitor and things come in. And then last but not least, I would say an evergreen problem is when working with external software providers and they're making data available to you, when they change the structure and look of their data, that has been a challenge of ours, is not being able to control, everything end to end, right? So if NGP decides to change all of the columns of data on their end, that impacts what we're doing, right? And so those have been kind of 3 key challenges that we've had to navigate as we've gone along.
Awesome. All right, got another question for you, Kenneth. So can you talk more about your decision to use Google Sheets versus a database like BigQuery or hosting your data directly on Redshift? Yeah.
I think ease of use was a big part of it. And so we stole this trick from the Biden 2020 campaign, which ran off of Looker Studio. And the attractiveness of the like kind of ease of use of setting it up. So anyone can set up a Looker Studio, even if you're not a data engineer. It's just painfully easy. And so that was a big part of it, right? It also has the benefit of like it's loading basically a cached data set, which is just stored in that Google Sheet. And so it's really zippy and fast. And that kind of answers the second or the third question on here from John, which is insightful on the Civis to Google Sheets rather than directly to Data Studio. That's the biggest reason we did that. You'll notice that actually inside of Looker Studio, you have the opportunity to directly connect to a Redshift database, and you can absolutely set that up with Civis. What we noticed is that for some of the visualizations that we wanted to show for each client, the load times were a little longer because you're pulling, fresher data more often when that happens. And so using the Google Sheets feature, we're basically pulling like a cached version of the data at any given time that we know is going to be there and be pretty zippy.
And I just want to add on there, we have a G Sheet export and import script on Civis. So it's really, really easy to get your data from Civis to those G Sheets. And, Kenneth's data is already on Civis platform. So it's just a matter of migrating it over there.
Right. So you can get to that in the export section. And that is just something that is part of our scheduled workflow. So we actually use that feature directly. We didn't custom code any sort of exporting to Google Sheet. It's built right into Civis, which is quite nice. Let's see. David's next question is, what work did you have to do at the outset to set up the initial data ingestion from the CRMs? Did it involve working with each client's CRMs to get what you need? Yeah, exactly. So we knew that our clientele has, Middleseat's a consulting firm, and so clients bring their own software to us. But we know that our clientele uses like a handful of common software, and that was kind of built in when we started this project. So we knew that a lot of our people are using NGP-Van, ActionKit, ActBlue, Shopify for their stores, Switchboard for texting. We also built like a Tatango integration. And so the process for getting started on any one of those platforms starts with us going to each of those software providers, looking through their documentation on what kinds of integrations they offer. Most of those software providers that we work with have some version of a SQL mirror, or NGP calls it Pipeline Cloud, which is just a replicated version of the entire database for each client. So that's a common go-to for us. ActBlue uses webhooks, which means every time a contribution is made on ActBlue, they will fire off a webhook with the data for that contribution. And so we had to build a custom integration for that uses that basically like processes the data every time it catches some data from ActBlue. But yeah, it really started with us visiting the docs for each of those software providers, seeing what they provided, and then sometimes, contacting their support teams and seeing what they recommended. Once we got a working version for a client on those, that's when we turned around and said, okay, we're going to make this kind of extendable by turning it into an install script. And so, hey, we have a working version of how to ingest data from ActionKit and how to transform it on a regular basis. That is the version controlled install script for ActionKit is the thing that we work off of for all clients so that it's scalable.
Looks like we got a follow-up from John about comparable flow to Microsoft. I don't think at this time we have a direct export to Microsoft's equivalent of Google Sheets, but that's something we can always build with an SOW, or if we're bringing on a client, that's always something we can offer. So if that's a connection you need, it's definitely a connection we can get built.
And there's also options, John. If you look at the Publish tab in your Civis platform, Looker Studio and equivalent products are not the only way to do this, right? It's the way that we're doing it, but it's definitely not the only way. And you might want to check out Streamlit or Shiny. Those are good options as well for getting your data out into the world and making it published.
And we have a really detailed set of Zendesk documentation. So everything that exists on Civis platform is documented in our Zendesk. So it's publicly available. So I definitely recommend checking that out and digging in to see what all Civis has to offer.
Mark is asking, is the main point of the DBT pipeline to massage the data into predefined report structure, regardless of source platform, or does the DBT provide something else? And yeah, that's exactly what it is. So we'll have some CRMs in common or whatever, like NGP, ActionKit, and Action Network are 3 CRMs we support. So if our clients come and we have one of those, we can use the installer and ingest their data and transform it into matching data across all of those CRMs so that the end result to the client looks the same, regardless of what you're using there. And so that's a big part of it. And then the second part of it is to get the giant data sets that are those SQL mirrors or the raw webhooks data into more palatable kind of summary level data that we're going to use to feed those Google Sheets. And so any given Google Sheet, we might be talking about a client that has 10 million contributions over their entire time, but our Google Sheet is just going to show 1,000 rows that summarize, when those contributions came in and where they came from, right? And so we use DBT to kind of build those reporting structures for sure.
I think that's the end of the questions. Again, if you have a Q&A question, you can access the Q&A by the 9 little dots, the 3x3 set of dots in the bottom right corner of the Google Hangout. Kenneth, you definitely know your stuff on Civis platform. You're doing a lot of my job for me, avoiding everything else.
No.
And for anyone who didn't catch the whole webinar, we will have this recorded and it will be live on our YouTube channel probably later this week, if not next week. So you can share that around, and we'll probably have a LinkedIn post about it as well.
Nothing worse than hearing your own voice on recording. So looking forward to that.
You did such a great job, though, right? So it's just an ego boost when you listen to it. But great questions from everybody. Excellent questions. Looks like that's going to be the end of the questions, though, unless something comes up soon.
I'll pop my email into the chat as well, and I'd love to connect with anyone who's interested in talking about this stuff or who has a follow-up question. I would be totally happy to correspond over email as well.
And if you have any questions about Civis, feel free to email us at support@civisanalytics.com.
The real experts.
Don't sell yourself short, kid. Thanks, everybody, for attending. Looks like that's it.
Thanks, y'all. See you later.
Have a good one.